Okay, we've completed 4.3. We're going to look at 4.4. In 4.3, we learned how to turn false statements into true ones. And we did this using the square of opposition. Today what we want to do is we want to look at how to turn terms into their opposite. Okay, what I mean by that is what is the opposite of a light object? That would be a heavy object. What's the opposite of a dog? It would be a non-dog. And so the opposite of a term is what we will call our term complement. So right here we call it the term complement. Examples: light objects are heavy objects, theists are atheists, dogs are non-dogs. And so when we note it, we represent it by a letter, and its complement is represented by the word non, followed by the letter of our term. So example, a light object would be L, a heavy object would be a non-L. A theist would be a T, a atheist would be a non-T. A dog would be a D, obviously a non-dog would be a non-D. Now we could reverse this for an example down at the bottom, and we could say that heavy objects are H and the light objects are non-H. So it doesn't matter which way we do it, but sometimes it comes into play when I start applying the three operations that we're going to talk about today in section 4.4. So sometimes when I write it out, sometimes it's easier for me to write it out so that my nons are in certain places so that certain operations can be done. The key to the operations, what we're looking at today, is we want to eliminate term complements. I don't want to see a non. I don't want to have to deal with a non. And so the way to do that is learn how to remove those from my statements. And that's the process of these three operations: conversion, obversion, and contraposition. Okay? Now remember that these do not work on all statements. Okay, so if you're taking notes with this, you might want to note that conversion works only on an E or I statement. Obversion works on all statements, and contraposition works only on A and O statements. And we'll look at each one separately. So the first one I'll look at is conversion. Remember, again, it works only on an E or an I statement, so therefore that's the only ones I have illustrated on this PowerPoint. And when we do the conversion, all we're going to do is switch the two around. So I'm going to switch the subject to the predicate and the predicate to the subject. So right here, I take a no ARB and I turn it into a no BRA. Okay, not real difficult. Basically, it says no cats or dogs, and it says no dogs or cats. Okay, some dogs are mammals, some mammals are dogs. So we're just turning it around. Now, you're looking at saying we didn't switch anything other than the predicate and the subject. But if I have for the purpose of illustration, if I'm going to deal with obversion and I have a non, if I have no non-A or B, I want to get the non over here, because then it works, as we'll see when we get to obversion. So there's reasons why we need conversion. And then sometimes what we're going to find is that 2 or 3 of these operations are done in order for us to get rid of all the terms. It sounds complicated, not as hard as it sounds. In obversion, what we want to do is we want to change the quality and then change the predicate to its term complement. And it'll work on all 4 statements. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to change quality. Now, if we remember that back in 4.2, if I look at the square of opposition, when I change quality, all I'm changing is an A statement becomes an E statement, and E statement becomes an A statement. I'm only going horizontal across the square. When we change quality, remember, changing quantity, we go vertical, changing quality, we go horizontal. So keep this in mind. So if I have an A statement right here, all A are B, that's an A statement. If I want to change the quality, I have to change it to a E statement. So it becomes a no ARB, but then I also change the predicate to its term complement. So when I switch the quality, I'm going to a no statement, and then I switch to the predicate to its term complement. So all ARB now becomes no A or non-B. I've switched to quality, and I've switched this to its term complement. So no ARB becomes all A or non-B. Here's where it can be a bit tricky. Once again, we're just going horizontal across the square of opposition. So when we look at this, some ARB, we have to realize to change the quality, right? Change the quality. This R is going to become an R naught. I'm going to turn this statement here into an O statement. So some A are not and then I change and give the predicate its term complement. So when I change quality and that, some A are B becomes some A are not non-B. Okay? So when we look at this, the thing that you have to realize is we're not changing the truth of either statement. This statement says the exact same thing as this statement. Okay? So keep that in mind. So we're not switching certain things around. Hopefully it's not too complicated, and hopefully I can keep it. Okay? So keep it simple. So we're changing the affirmative to the negative, and then we're switching and adding the term complement to the predicate. Alright, so they're the same statements. When we look at contraposition, it works only on an A statement or an O statement. Okay, it does not work on an E or I statement. Here what we're going to do is we're going to flip both. We're going to switch the subject and the predicate, and we're going to apply a term complement to both. Or we're going to switch the predicate and the subject and remove the term complements. In most cases, what we're doing in contraposition is we're going to remove the term complements. So for me to do that, I swap A and B, so all non-B are non-A becomes all A are B. So it works in both directions. So keep that in mind. Every one of the statements works in both directions. What it does is it lets me get rid of the non. Okay, as soon as I do that, I've gotten rid of the non. So if I have a proposition or a statement that says both nons, I can immediately do contraposition and get rid of my nons. Okay, and it makes it very, very simple that way. Okay, so it helps me get rid of the nons. So a couple things to keep in mind. In Boolean logic, as we saw in 4.3, the argument is valid if the premise and conclusion say the same thing. So what I want to do here is I want to actually give you an example. So if you have a piece of paper, you might want to write this down. And I'm getting a piece of paper as I speak. Okay, because it makes it a little bit easier when you see it. So write it down. So let's do all I, insured people or I. So right here, all I are. And then what we're going to do is say people with good medical coverage. So we're going to do that as a P. Okay, so what we should have written down right now is all I are P. And then we're going to have our conclusion right here. Therefore, all people with bad medical coverage. So I've already identified people with good medical coverage. Therefore, I know that people with bad medical coverage are going to be non of what I have written here. So I'm going to write all non-P, right? Because these people here have good medical coverage. These people have bad. It's the opposite. Are uninsured people. Here I talked about insured people, so all uninsured people would be non-I's. Okay, so now what you should have is you should have on your paper all I are P, and a line representing going to the conclusion, and then all non-P are non-I. Okay, and that's what you should have. So when we write it out, it should look like this. All I are G, right here. All non-G are non-I. The conclusion is the contrapositive of the premise, right? We switch the subjects to the predicate, and the subject here to the predicate, and we give it the non-term, or the term complement. So all I are G becomes all non-G are non-I. In doing this, we're saying the exact same thing. Since it works on an A statement, that means it's valid. Okay, because it works on an A statement or an O statement, okay, it's valid. If I do this to an E or an I statement, okay, what's written here, if this is an E statement and my conclusion is an I statement, and I use contraposition to get there, it is an invalid argument. Okay, it's only valid on an A or an O statement. So you got to keep that in mind. That's one of the places most people get tripped up. Okay, so the conclusion is a contrapositive of the premise. Since the statement is an A statement, contraposition can be used. Therefore, this is now a valid syllogism, a valid argument. Okay, so let's look at this using a Venn diagram. So let's kind of look at this and we'll explain it as we go. The premise was all I are P. Okay, or G. I guess here we use G. Okay, so all I are G. So what we have right here is these are all the I's, okay, that are not members of G, because this is all G. This is all I. The Pac-Man that's shaded and the football, that's what we're going to call these two figures, represent, these two together represent the whole of I. Okay? All of these I's are G. But all of these I's are not G, therefore they're not members of G. All I's are G. All I are G. So these are non-members. That's why it's shaded. Okay? When I look at the conclusion, all non-G are non-I. Okay? Let's see. What is non-G? That's all of these. What are non-I's? That's all of these. So all the area that is non-G, alright, so that's all of these, are non-I. Okay, so these are I's, but they're also in the G. So all the areas that are non-G and non-I would be this right here. Okay, so when we look at it, this is what our premise, syllogism out looks like. This is what our conclusion, when we write the syllogism, looks like. Okay, so they're saying the exact same thing. So here's a little chart you might want to get reminder. And then once again, let me remind you on page 224 and 225 of the textbook, you have a little chart that tells you the truth value, the given statement that if you converse it, averse it, or contrapositive it, it gives you the truth value, tells you what statement works on and what statement it doesn't. So if I have a non in my subject, if I have an A or no statement, I can't do anything about it. If I have an E or an I statement, I can use conversion to get the non into the predicate, right, from the subject to the predicate, and therefore it becomes, I can use it and it works. If I have a non in the predicate, I can use obversion on an A or no statement. I can use obversion on an E or an I statement because obversion works on anything. Okay? If I have it in the subject and the predicate, I use contraposition on an A or a no statement. If I have an E or an I statement, I can do absolutely nothing with it. Okay? So one of the things that we keep in mind, it depends on what we have and where it's at. Okay? So this little chart kind of gives you an example. I will explain it in a little greater detail when we get to class. And hopefully it will help you. This will help you get started. And then hopefully I can answer any questions you might have as we get further into it. So have fun doing your homework for section 4.4. We'll see you in section 4.5.